Greetings and salutations. Welcome to a video about audio. This is going to be sort of an audio vlog type video because what I want to do is talk about what I'm into right now and follow up on a couple of the videos that I have posted recently on the channel that were audio related. If you are here mainly for Linux content and you happen to be watching this video anyway, don't jump away quite yet. I have some channel related things I want to talk about right up front here. First of all, thank you to everybody who has posted comments. There is a problem with my YouTube account right now where I am not receiving notifications, or I have not been receiving notifications. I got one today. I'm going through an insomnia bout right now. I do this about twice a year where I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't go back to bed. This happened to me this morning, and I went to the computer and checked my email, and I saw that I actually had a notification from YouTube. It was a comment on another video, and that got me to looking at all of the other comments that I hadn't been getting notifications on. For some reason, over the last few months, the notifications on my channel just stopped working. And I would log into my YouTube page and there would be no little number by the bell. And when you'd click on it, it would be completely empty. And it would say, here's where your notifications will appear. And also, it wasn't sending me any email. For many years, I had it set up that any time that I got a notification on YouTube about anything, it would copy that into an email and send it to my email account because I'm in my email all the time. And that was really nice because a lot of the comments that I receive don't necessarily need a reply, but I would like to read what you have to say. I would say about 95% of the people who post a comment make a statement, which is fine. But I don't necessarily need to respond to that. I look for question marks. If people ask me questions, then I do try and respond to you. If you have posted something that was a question and you have not heard from me and you're thinking, what's going on? It's because I have not been getting my regular notifications, and then life happens and I forget to log in to YouTube and go to the studio creator thing and look at the comments there, because right now that's the only place that I can see them unless I click on the individual video itself. Then of course I can see the comments that go along with that. Hopefully that has changed now, because I did receive a comment when I checked my email this morning, and that sort of pushed me toward coming into the music room and recording this video. So thank you to everybody who has watched the videos that have been posted. I've had a couple of them that have been quite successful. We did a video about ripping CDs in Linux. I showed you my process and how I do that. That video did quite well. Another video that did very well was 40 years of collecting CDs. And if I knew that video was going to get all the views it did, then I would have probably done a better job producing it. But that's the way it works. You never know what people are into. So where do we begin with this video? Well, if you have been following along here, you will know that for most of this year, my focus has been on digital audio. I got into rounding out my CD collection, picking things up off of eBay, and putting them in the computer. I talked about that. And this has been my main focus, is just for whatever reason, I got fascinated with CDs and CD audio, and I got a yin for first generation CDs. I wanted to collect CDs that were pressed in 1983 and 84, because if you go look it up in Wikipedia, it will tell you that the CD was originally introduced in 1982. Well, commercial CDs didn't start really becoming available in America until mid-1983, summertime. I remember that quite well. And I just got fascinated with those early discs, especially Target CDs, which are CDs from Warner, Elektra, and Atlantic Records that had a label that looked like a Target. They were made in 83 and 84, and they're the first pressings of a lot of big albums. So I was into that sort of thing. And then something happened the other day that, well, it's been a couple weeks now back, that changed my direction, because I was kind of getting done with that. And I had been working with I have a digital library that I maintain where I have ripped songs, downloaded songs, that sort of thing. I kind of got to a place where I wanted to stop fooling around with that. I went on eBay and I came across this gem right here. And it is a very rare Stanton stylus for the 681A cartridge, which means that it is a conical stylus. The tip of the stylus is shaped like a ball or a cone. And I could not resist this. I picked it up. I think it was about $78 or something like that. I was like, sold, because I have kind of a running search going on eBay looking for anything that has to do with Stanton cartridges. I've posted about them in the past. And so I took a risk and I bought this stylus. It said it was packed. It was in the original packaging. It had never been opened. And sure enough, that was the truth. So when I got this and put it on my Stanton 680EL that is on my dual turntable, it blew me out of the room. It's unbelievable. The Stanton 681 is part of Stanton's calibration series. The 681 cartridge is famous for being ruler flat, and when you bought one, it actually came with a card that talked about its calibration, and they're very careful about making sure that they meet the specs and all that stuff. This was back in the 70s that these came out, so we're talking about some pretty old tech. But finding replacement styli specifically for those cartridges is somewhat difficult. And one of the beautiful things about Stanton is that if you have a 680 series cartridge, whether it be 680 or 681, all the styli are completely compatible. So this is an unusual beast in today's world in that it is a very nice, well-made conical stylus. Conical styli today are mainly found on the cheapest versions of cartridges, which is really sort of a shame because you don't get the best cartridge to go with a stylus. And another thing that I picked up, this is not here yet, this should actually be in the mail today to me later today, is a Stanton 680EE, or a Stanton 680EE. Grammar always gets on my nerves. Anyway, this is the high fidelity version of the Stanton 680 cartridge. This is a Stanton 680EL. Did a whole video on that cartridge. And this is the standard reference cartridge for broadcasting and discos, DJs. These cartridges were ruggedized versions of the regular Stanton 680. This is the hi-fi version of that, and it comes with a stylus that tracks at just 1.25 grams. And yeah, you can get away with tracking it at 1 gram. It's a 0.3 by 0.7 elliptical stylus that comes with this particular cartridge. It's a Stanton D680 stylus is what these have. That's the one to look for. Now, I have a D680 stylus for my Stanton EL body, 680 EL body, and it works great. But I wanted the cartridge all in one piece, and one finally popped up at a price that I could muster. This is a used cartridge, but looking at the pictures very carefully, I can tell you that this cartridge has extremely low hours. It has been very well taken care of. So this is going to go on my Fluence turntable. That's where this is headed. So right now, I should have a picture in here. I'll get back to those two pictures in a moment of the two turntables that I'm running. So on the right, you see the dual CS618Q, which I've done several videos about. Just for a quick recap on that turntable, this is a very early prototype model of the dual 618, which is the relaunch of the dual line. And this particular turntable was actually built in Germany. It wasn't made in China. It is serial number 96. It took me a while to figure this out. Basically, what they did was, when they relaunched the dual line not too long ago in Germany, they built the first 100 by hand in Germany, and they sent them out for display prototypes. That's where I got this one. It was an open box that I bought, and I just happened to look at the serial number on the back and saw that it was 96, and I went, wow. So that led me to look what was going on with that, and also the fact that it says it's made in Germany, in German, on the back of the turntable. So that's a very cool turntable. The tone arm on that turntable is very precise. I mean, dead on, perfect precise. And so this is a good candidate for the Stanton 680 EL with the new conical 6807 stylus I just showed you guys. And perfect for playing 45s and making super high quality transfers to digital from records. The lighter tracking D680 styli I was just talking about, they tend to sound good, but they don't have the oomph that you get from a conical that's tracking at 2 grams. It's just a different sound, and very detailed from this particular Stanton conical. It's one of the things that people will tell you, well, they can't track the high frequencies as good as the ellipticals can. Well, maybe on paper that might be true, but my ears are telling me I'm hearing lots of detail from that cartridge, so that's pretty nice. What I plan to do is I'm going to give the Fluence some love. It needs a little bit of an overhaul, and it's going to get this new Stanton 680 EE cartridge, and I am going to be cleaning the spindle for the belt. I'm going to be just making sure that everything is as it should be. I've had this turntable now for 2 or 3 years, and I am not seeing any significant wear on the belt. It's not loosening up. I have thought about replacing it, but for right now, it seems to be working perfectly, and so it doesn't need a belt right now, but that's something down the road. And one of the things that it probably will need is to have the piston in the lifter, put a little bit more oil in that so it will slow down. It's starting to it's starting to go down a little faster than I would like, and that happens over time. I went to the Fluence website, and they basically said that you went to Amazon and bought this little tube of oil, put a couple of drops in it, and that's it. So when I get around to doing that, I'm actually going to make a video on that, because I don't think anybody else on the internet has done it. So that it might be something that's very cool, how to basically put more viscous fluid in your lifter so that the cartridge is slowly lowered onto the record and it doesn't drop it. It's not dropping it now. It's just, you can tell that it's been a few years and it's starting to go a little faster than it has in the past. So we'll see how that goes. Not that big of a deal at all. So I think between these two turntables that I'm going to be just really satisfied. Like I said, the dual has been set up mainly to play back 45s and to transfer things onto digital. The cartridge that I had been using for a while on this turntable was an Audio-Technica 510CB. This is a VM 510CB, part of the 500 series. I've done videos about those cartridges in the past. I'm kind of over it and I'm moving on to something else because there are issues with these cartridges that get on my nerves. I just couldn't live with them. Now, if you have one and you like the sound and it's doing what you want it to do, great. I'm just super picky. So I'm being super picky here, folks. So the 510 CB cartridge was a tiny bit of a disappointment because the output between the left and the right channels was way out of balance. The right channel on this cartridge is literally about 4 or 5 dB louder than the left. When you make a recording from this cartridge and you correct for that by just setting the levels on the channels differently, it doesn't affect the stereo imaging. Everything sounds fine. So it's a quirk with the cartridge. And it makes it, like I said, you can use it to make recordings and whatnot, but just for daily listening, that's annoying. Especially on a system where you don't have individual balance for inputs. There's no place to tweak that. On the dual turntable, what I do is use the internal preamp, and there's no trimmer anywhere that allows you to balance the channels. That's something you just won't find on a lot of modern preamps. Way back a long time ago, if you had an outboard preamp, a high quality one, Stanton made some really good preamps. They had trimmers. You could do that. It's very difficult to find that these days. So you're relying on your cartridge having well-balanced channels and the coils being well-balanced and all that stuff. So this cartridge kind of went into mothballs. And that's part of what I wanted to talk about in this video. Was one of the reasons that I'm kind of bummed out about Audio-Technica cartridges right now is they've done a lot in the last 5 years to cheapen their product, and I have pretty much run my way through the entire Audio-Technica line, at least their moving magnet cartridges. So here is a video thumbnail that I posted years ago talking about the Audio-Technica VM95EN and the AT VM530EN. Now these cartridges are nude elliptical styli, and one of them is the VM95 series and the other one's the 500 series, the VM500 series. Now, if you go look these up, you're going to find out real quick that the body stays the same, but then they offer different styli for the cartridges. So you start out with a conical, then you have a bonded elliptical, and then you'll have a nude elliptical, and then you'll have a microline, and then you'll have a Shibata. This is on the entire line of these cartridges. I bought and reviewed on my channel pretty much the highest end one that you can get within the 500 series, and that would be the 540 microline. The Shibata stylus costs a little bit more, but I don't know whether that sounds better than the microline, so you can debate that in the comments if you want to, but I feel like that I pretty much got the top of the line. The next thing up would have been the 740, which takes exactly the same styli as the 500 series, but it's an aluminum body. And basically they charge you $50 extra for an aluminum body. A lot of people will tell you in the forums and stuff that I read that the polycarbonate body on the 500 series actually sounds better. So I don't know about that. So I had a flirtation here with very high-end cartridges from Audio-Technica, and they all ended up being a disappointment in the end. So the 510 CB, when I first got it, like I said, it sounded very, very good, except for that channel balance issue. So that made me not want to use it on a daily basis. And, of course, if I took the 510 CB stylus, which is blue, and I put it on either the EN body or the ML body, the 530 or 540, and played it, it sounded fine. It was balanced. And that gets back to the way they do these things. Okay, so what Audio-Technica does is they make a whole bunch of bodies and then they test them. And the bodies that test the best go on the more expensive cartridges because they, percentage-wise, they are making fewer bodies that meet the higher specifications. So it's basically somebody puts all of these things, plugs them into some sort of tester that they can look at the whether the coils are balanced and stuff like that, and they're sorting them. They're saying, okay, this one's going to be a 510 CB because it's not balanced properly, and we're putting the cheapest stylus we have on it. So therefore, we're making the, they sell them for $100 about. So there you go. When you get to the 540 ml, now you're talking about $300 with a head shell, like $250 or something like that. So now they will then take the body that tests better and they'll put it over on that one. And that's how they do it before they get the number stamped on the top. So it kind of sucks because, like I said earlier, getting a very nice conical stylus that actually sounds good is difficult because they usually ship them with the cheap bodies. So what is one to do? Do you buy an Audio-Technica VM530EN and take the nude elliptical stylus off of it and then put a conical on it? Well, that's kind of stupid because now you're paying, what, $50 for the conical stylus? You could do that if you wanted to, but that kind of got on my nerves. The other thing about these cartridges is the VM series. When you say VM95E here, this is the replacement supposedly for the Audio-Technica 95E. And the 95E and the VM95 are completely different cartridges. They don't sound as good. The VM95 cartridges, and I even mentioned this in this review, have a very flat stereo image. There's just not a whole lot of excitement there. For me, the bass is a little truncated. It doesn't quite. It's okay. It's a very polite sound. It's not bad. It's okay. It's all right. But it's just not for me. It doesn't have any oomph or bounce to it. So you say, okay, well, I'm going to get the 530 series. The problem with the 530 series cartridges is that getting them to give you a flat response is difficult. You have to have just the right cabling, or you have to have a preamp where you can adjust the loading, because essentially Audio-Technica's specification for capacitance is impossible because it doesn't take into account cables and stuff like that. If you get an Audio-Technica turntable, and I have had a couple of them, you will notice that they have a slightly dimmer sound. They compensate for that. So if you took like one of these 500 series or 700 series cartridges and put them on that turntable, it works out flat, which is okay. But if you use them on anything else, standard preamps, they don't quite match up quite. It's not quite right. Now, if you like a super bright sound, good for you. After a while, it gets on my nerves. Which leads me to a comment that I got not too long ago. Just read this tonight. And somebody was talking about the Stanton cartridges, because I had gone on about how great Stantons were, and 681. The guy said he had a 681 cartridge. And he was comparing it to a Shure VM15 or V15. And to his ears, the V15 sounded better, and he said he could hear more detail. And yeah, probably you could. The reason why is because Shure cartridges they don't make them anymore, so it's in past tense. Or if you have one, you have a Shure cartridge. You will notice that Shure cartridges have a very distinctive sound. They compress the mids a little bit. It's just the way the coils work, the design of the cartridge. And it's a nice warm sound, don't get me wrong. And if you compare it directly to, let's say, what a Stanton will give you, Stantons, like I said, are ruler flat pretty much, then you may think that Shure sounds better because you got this little oomph, it draws a U in the sound, it's sweet. And for me, after I use one of those cartridges for a while, this has always been my experience with Shure cartridges, is that sound is appealing to me for a while, and then after a bit I can hear it on everything, and I can hear the color that the cartridge is putting on the sound. And I never quite get used to it, so I always end up going somewhere else. And so the Stanton, when you first listen to them, may appear to be, super flat, but I like that. I like that because that means the sound is going to change with every record you play, and that's the way it ought to be. It shouldn't be that you're hearing a sound from the cartridge. Or that's the same thing, truthfully, with a microphone or headphones or anything. But transducers, pieces of equipment that change electrical energy into physical energy, or vice versa, like a microphone and a phono cartridge takes a physical energy and turns it into electrical energy, they, by their nature, impart their individual properties. There are no two microphones, phono cartridges, speakers that sound the same. It's part of the fun, actually. So it's whatever your ears like best. And I think one of the reasons that I got so deep into Audio-Technica cartridges for a while is that I actually had a problem with my ears and didn't realize it. This was going on for a long time, and I lost a lot of high frequencies in my ears until I addressed the issue. And it was just a sinus thing where my ears were clogging up and I couldn't hear. They're much better now. So now I look for flat. It's like, oh, I've got those high frequencies back. I really honestly believe that one of the reasons that I was really liking the Audio-Technica cartridges, I'm going back over here again, is because I was compensating for a kind of a dim sounding system, and my ears were messed up. If it works for you, great. I'm not saying... now, when I talk about Audio-Technica cartridges, you might be thinking I'm putting a bad mouth on the whole brand name. I have to tell you, the 211 body style, this would be the AT 3600, 3600L, the AT 91B, 91R, old school. They still make them. They don't sell them retail, but you can still get them. That's a different ballgame. Those cartridges are sweet, and they're very flat, they're very old, they're very cheap, and I love them. Matter of fact, that's what's on my Fluence right now. The Stanton 680EE will change that. I'm talking about the VM series. I'm talking about the VM 95 and the VM 500 series and the VM 740 series, the 700 series. Moving magnet cartridges. They're just don't have the finesse that they used to. Like the 530EN is supposed to be a direct comparison to the Audio-Technica 120E. Now, the 120E was every bit as bright as the 530, but I think the 120E had more poise to it. I had one of those cartridges for years. Just my opinion. Have fun with it. But Audio-Technica is the biggest manufacturer of cartridges out there, and for a lot of people, this is the introduction that they have to what records sound like these days, because a lot of turntables come with AT cartridges of some ilk on them. Like I said, I'm just being picky. So I'm going all Stanton from this point forward. I think that I'm just going to stick with the Stanton 680s. I'll have two of them now on two turntables, and I'm just going to look out for Stanton new old stock styli. And that's how I'm going to roll from now on. I really honestly think that I have been through the cartridge jungle. I am not saying that every other cartridge is bad. This is just work. This is what works for my ears. This is it right here. And I just love Stantons. And for many years, I didn't have a turntable. I didn't have a turntable from 1993 until 2010. So what is that, 17 years? And when I came back to records, the first turntable that I bought was a linear tracking Radio Shack linear tracker. I think it was the Lab 2100, and it had a Stanton cartridge on it. And back in the day, when I was into, when I first started in radio, and I had at home, I had Pickering cartridges, Shure cartridges, and Audio-Technica cartridges. And I really liked my Pickering, which of course is related to Stanton. And of course, in radio stations, Stantons ruled. That's what we had. So in my mind, when I came back to records, I'm comparing everything I hear in my mind to Stanton cartridges. And Stanton, of course, is out of business, and I don't think that they're going to be producing any more cartridges. So this presents a problem. They just don't make anything like that anymore. And so I've just kind of made the decision that for my own personal thing, I'm just going to keep looking for new old stock styli and keep rocking with it. I have about 4 or 5 styli for the 680 right now, and I'm happy with them. So, yeah, I just don't feel like fooling around with other cartridges anymore. I think this is what I'm going to do for a while, at least. Now, there's a couple of things about the Stanton cartridges that I wanted to talk about here, too. And that is that people don't understand the brush, the long-haired brush on the cartridge. And there's a lot of debate online back and forth about what the brush does and why is it there and how you should set up the cartridge if you intend to use the brush. And even some web pages like LP Tunes, Turntable Needles. I've seen this on LP Gear as well, that they'll say take the brush off and don't use it. This is because they don't understand what it's doing. And the brush is not there to clean the record. That is a side effect of having the brush. It will pick up hair and dust and little bits of schmutz and keep it away from the stylus. But that's not the reason why it's there. The reason why the brush is there is to stabilize the cartridge as it plays. And it adds mass to the head shell. It allows you to run, let's say, at 1 gram or 1.25 grams in the case of the D680 styli, but still have the benefit of having the extra mass at the head shell. The brush itself, it is when you set up the cartridge, you actually add tracking force compensating for the brush. So the proper way to do that is let's say that you have a Stanton stylus that you want to track at 1.25 grams, which would be the D680, or 2 grams in the case of the 6807 here, or actually it's 2.25, 2.25. But what you do is that you set your tone arm for 3.25 grams. And you set your anti-skate for 3.25 grams. You compensate for that brush's existence. The brush itself weighs about 1 gram, and it exerts 1 gram of force down on the record when you put the whole assembly down. So if you don't take that into account, then you're not tracking with enough tracking force, and it's not going to work properly. It's going to sound like crap. And even I was confused about that for a while, and I got onto a forum where there was a post from the former president of marketing for Stanton Cartridges, who explained that the engineers were a bit cagey about their technical data and they didn't really explain things as well as they should have in the manuals. And he's basically outlined the procedure that you just add a gram everywhere and boom, that's it. Now what I end up doing is I will go ahead and add a gram, but then I will back off on the anti-skate by about a quarter gram, especially for the conical stylus, because it requires a bit less anti-skate, and that seems to give me absolutely perfect dead-on balance, especially with the dual tone arm. The dual tone arm on the dual 618Q is unbelievable. So if you run across these cartridges, leave the brush on and just compensate for it when you set it up. And then don't worry about it, because people are going on about in forums, well, I don't know whether there's a skating force with the brush and how much this has to be and whatever. It all comes out in the wash. The brush stabilizes the cartridge as it plays. That's the same thing with the Shure cartridges that had the stabilizer brush. That's what they were there to do. And does it affect the audio? With Stanton's, absolutely not. I don't hear the brush playing the grooves of the record or anything like that. It doesn't make any noise. With the old Shure cartridges that had brushes, when they were new especially, you could hear them kind of play the grooves of the record before the song would start. You'd hear a little pre-echo. But that's what the brush is there for. So I run the brush. The brush has advantages, and it also smooths out the low frequency response, because it tends to dampen out resonances down there that can cause weird things to go on with the low frequencies. But Stanton does say in their brochures, and this guy pointed out, that if you are in a situation where you need to do critical back cueing, that you could take the brush off of the stylus and run without it. If you want to do it that way, go right ahead. I liked having the brush there. I think they're cool. And I bring that up because I posted a video way back a long time ago where I was fooling around with a Stanton 500 cartridge, and I was using a Pickering stylus for it that had a Dust-O-Matic brush on it. That was the Pickering trade name for that brush. They called it a Dust-O-Matic, and for the Stanton side of the house, they called them the long hair brush. And they basically both did the same thing. And some Pickering styli are interchangeable with Stanton cartridges, especially in the 500 series. But when you're dealing with Stanton 680 and XV15 Pickerings, not all of those styli are interchangeable. You have to look that up. But anyhow, was talking about that, and this guy just started raving about how horrible it was to have a brush and how it messed up the sound. And I think the engineers at Pickering and Stanton knew what they were doing. And this guy he went on and on about it. And then, you don't understand. There's a level of ignorance toward this. And a lot of that is Stanton's fault, because they didn't do a very good job at explaining what this thing did. So, just putting that out there for fun. So what else did I want to talk about? Well, I did want to talk a little bit about the computer here. The last video I did was about this machine and getting it set up to Bluetooth into my Sony amplifier so that I could stream music out of this machine. And since then, I have worked out how to get it to automatically connect, which I did not have figured out when I posted the video. I was still working on setting that up. And the other thing that I have found is that I am able to use the SBC XQ setup, the configuration for the SBC codec. So the SBC codec is the simple Bluetooth codec. That's the standard one. You'll hear a lot about really hi-fi stuff using aptX, that particular codec, to transfer Bluetooth audio over to headphones or an amplifier or something like that. This doesn't support that, obviously, but the SBC XQ profile, it's just kind of an upgrade on the standard SBC codec, which in and of itself doesn't sound that horrible, really makes a difference in the sound. It is very close to what aptX can do. And I'm familiar with aptX because many, many years ago I worked with aptX in a professional situation. So aptX is very good sounding. It's not perfect. It has its flaws, but it is a super high-end foo-foo compression format that it does sound very good, especially in a Bluetooth environment. But the SBC XQ, that sounds pretty good too. And fortunately, the Linux Mint folks had this set up and ready to go, and I didn't have to fool around with it much. I just happened to find it in a setting. So if I open this up and we go to Bluetooth, now there's stuff on the screen for those of you who weren't watching. I'm showing the Bluetooth manager here. You'll see that we have this box. And this amplifier, by the way, is off right now. So if I turn this amp on, if the computer sees it, it will automatically connect to it. And the trick I found to getting that to work was there was a little box that kept popping up that said, "This wants to connect. Do you want to accept?" And the options were to cancel, accept, or always accept. So I had to click always accept. The problem was that box timed out so quick I wasn't even seeing it. And so I had to go back into the notifications to find it. And then once I did that, now I got the automatic hookup. But what I wanted to show you was here, if I right click, and let's see where it is here. Is it in here? Let's see. What am I looking for? Hold on just a second. That's not what we want, folks. Here we go. I'm trying to see if it'll show me the audio profile. Trying to figure out how to get to that. Of course, this is what happens when you do things unscripted. I think it has to be connected before it'll show me that. I can choose the audio profile, and it's allowing me to do, let's see. Anyway, it's in here somewhere. If you have this software, you can look it up yourself. Just right-click, it comes up. You can choose your audio profile. And when you click in here, it pops up that you want XBC, you want SBC XQ is what you're going to want. So let me see here. Let me see. I don't know if this will mess up the. No, it'll probably mess up the recording. I'm not going to try and do it. Anyway, take my word for it. It's in there, but you have to be connected to see it, apparently. And so once I got all that sorted out and tried out the different options, this thing is pretty much amazing when it's playing music. It is, like I said, the quality. For a long time there, I was thinking to myself, well, I'm going to have to get me a DAC, and then I can use a USB cable to go into the amplifier, right? And now I don't think I need to do that because the Bluetooth, even with headphones on, is good enough that I enjoy listening to it. Does it sound as good as a CD directly? No, there's a difference in the sound, but not that much. So for what I use this for, which is basically to just shuffle music, it's fine. It's doing exactly what I want it to do, and the Bluetooth settings are good enough, and the Bluetooth receiver is good enough in that Sony that it sounds really nice. So that's kind of where this is at. One of the comments that came up, I guess I'll do this and then I'll get out of this video, which is running on forever, and I'm just rambling. One of the comments that came up on the video I posted about CDs was that I think I had said that some records sound better than a CD. And this person, of course, felt it necessary to post a little diatribe, 3 or 4 paragraphs, about how CDs will always sound better than records because they have better specifications and better noise floor and all of this other stuff. And, people will ask me what's better, and I'll tell them, well, it really depends on what you're listening to, which is so true. Because some records sound great, some CDs sound awful. It depends on the mastering. It depends on the material itself. It depends on what mood the engineers were in when they put this stuff together. But when you start comparing the two formats, to me, they're more apples and oranges than trying to figure out which is the better delivery system. So I've become kind of, I won't really take a stand on that because I'll say, well, it depends on what you like. However, the truth is that if you really push me up against the wall, I'm going to tell you that records can do things that CDs only dream of being able to do. And I don't know why that is. There are some records that have an extra dimension of sound that it's a sound that you literally cannot get from a CD. And I can hear it. I mean, you can take that same record and you say, okay, let me take the record and I will record it to a CD. I have a CD recorder sitting right here. I can record directly to a blank CD. No file in between, no dithering, no playing around with anything. Just put it straight onto the disc, right? With a pretty good DAC. It's an AKM DAC. And that's what's built into it. And when you play that back, whatever that little extra dimension was, that little extra bit of depth is gone. The moment that it goes to digital, it just goes away. And that is something that I've heard since digital first came along. The first digital devices that I ever got to play with, way back in the 80s, we were just getting DAT machines and radio stations, digital audio tape. So at that time, they were 48 kilohertz. 48 kilohertz sampling rate, 16-bit, and then later on we had 24-bit DAT machines. And there were numerous occasions where I would take a tape, and we're talking about a professional open reel tape, and put it up on a machine and then transfer that to DAT, or a little bit later on when they came along, put it into a digital audio workstation. And you're listening to this tape, and this is in effect a master, and when you digitize it, what plays back is different. Now, if you start digitally, if you record directly into the digital domain and you do your mixing digitally, you can get better results than if you do analog and then put that into digital. And I think it's because you compensate for the limitations that digital has, whatever that is, whether that be resolution or whatever. I don't know what it is. I can't really put my finger on the difference. And so, for instance, if you go listen to Steely Dan's Two Against Nature on CD, that is a really fine sounding CD. And recently I did a video about Steely Dan's Two Against Nature being released on vinyl LPs running at 45 RPM. And that's from a high-res digital file. That sounds better than the CD. Because when Donald and Walter were recording that album, and the engineers, they were working completely in the digital domain. What they were hearing, they tweaked until they got to sound the way they wanted it to. So when you play the disc, you're hearing what they wanted. When you go from analog to digital, something's lost or something changes. So a lot of times, you'll hear an album, let's say, that's on a very clean LP, and then you'll go listen to the CD version, and you'll go, wow, what a difference. When technically speaking, they probably just put the same tape up and dumped them both over, So I don't really have an explanation for that, but it does exist. There are certain things that I find to be, when you play the record, you just hear more. I don't know why. It's just the process. It could be anything. It could be, I don't know. There's a lot of different variables in there. I will say this, records tend to be more inconsistent simply because of the fact that there's more steps in the process, and there's more opportunities for things to happen that would affect the sound. Like, if you go pick up a record, and we're talking about just a regular pressing of any album that you like, especially if it's not an original first pressing, but this is a reissue later on down the line, you're not hearing the master tape. They didn't take the master out of the box every time they wanted to make records. No, what the record companies did was they made several work tapes from that master. And those work tapes are what the run-of-the-mill stock copies came from. Some of those work tapes are not that great. They'll be a generation down. The engineer would throw them up on the machine, and he wouldn't pay close attention to channel balance, for instance. There's a lot of things that happen with tape. Tape can have problems. The heads can be dirty on the machine. The heads can be out of alignment. The tape itself could be feathered, which is where it kind of gets a wrinkly appearance, and that will change the sound. It'll cause sort of a wavy sound. Tape will skew across the heads, even if the machine is set up properly. For whatever reason, the tape will tend to kind of want to move around. All of this changes the sound. One of the big things that you'll hear with tape, especially on compilations, a lot of sessions compilations, because the record companies didn't give them the original master and say, here, put this on your compilation. No, they sent them a copy, like a 5-inch reel of tape, and said, here you go. And when they would play them back, a lot of times you'll hear that one channel won't have enough high frequencies, and it just smears the stereo imaging because the voices are just like all the high end of the voices, all the sibilance is over in one channel and stuff like that. This is analog, okay? This is the reality of analog. That's not necessarily happening with records themselves. It's the tape that they come from. Tape is not the greatest of, a lot of kids these days are hearing people go, well, I miss tape, and tape was wonderful. Tape was fussy. And I can tell you that because for the first 10 years of my career in radio, in the 80s and 90s and into the early 2000s, I had to deal with tape. And a tape recorder, you can align it one day, you get the alignment tape down and make sure it's perfect, and then the weather changes and you come in the next day and it sounds different. So there's a lot of variables in there. But I will say that a very well-cut record from a well-maintained tape machine where the engineer is paying attention to the levels and all this stuff falls into place, to my little earballs, can sound better than digital. So do with that what you will. But the main thing is that you get these guys that are, the digital heads, and they're like, well, it's always better. No, it's not. It's very subjective. Who cares whether there's 100 dB noise floor or the noise is 70 to 100? Nobody cares about that crap. Nobody's paying attention. Now, if you have a 50 dB noise floor, that's different. That's going to be annoying, but it depends on your ears and your tolerances. So there you go. Is there anything else that I wanted to ramble about? I don't know. Probably coming up here, I want to do a little video about the 680EE. I may or may not do that, depending on if there's a whole lot new to report. I've already talked a great deal about these Stanton cartridges. Oh, the reason why I had this graphic in here, this picture, this old GE portable record player, was another point that I wanted to make about the people who say records are better than CDs. If this is what you're listening to, then it doesn't matter. If you go out and buy yourself a Crosley Cruiser, a good old Chinese groove chewer, and you start listening to records with that, then you're not getting any quality out of that more than digital of any kind whatsoever. You do have to invest a little bit of money into a good turntable. And yes, it's true, you have to have clean records. And if you're going to be collecting used records, you probably want to invest in like a spin clean record cleaner, okay? There's steps to the process. That's why this is a hobby. It's not people who don't care about music stream it. If you care about music, you're going to be collecting physical media, and you're going to be it's a different thing. So if it's not your taste, that's fine. If you don't want to deal with it, okay. If you don't think records sound better than CDs and you don't want to fool with it, that's all right. But don't go around peeing on somebody else's parade. Don't go around saying, no, this is better and you're wrong. Because that's just taking all the fun out of it for somebody. And it's just you being a dick, so don't do it. Right? People hear different things. They have different sensibilities. I'll give you 2 examples. Some people can't eat broccoli. There's a chemical in broccoli that some people are sensitive to that makes it taste very bitter to them. They don't like it. I love broccoli. That chemical doesn't bother me. But some people do. Now, I have a sensitivity to a chemical which is in Dawn dish detergent. Now, it may not be there now, but it was definitely there many years ago, because I remember every time that we would ever buy Dawn dish detergent and we'd wash the dishes with it, you'd put the sponge up on the sink to dry and come back later, and to me, that sponge smelled like it was rotten. It had this, very weird, astringent smell to it that I can't describe. And the reason why I can't describe it is most people can't smell it. Turns out that I am particularly sensitive to the smell of this chemical. I finally found that out because I was wondering why it was that I couldn't stand Dawn for years. Some people are like that. The moral of the story is that everybody's different and everybody hears different things, and we need to respect that. Even if we do think they're an idiot, it doesn't mean that it's nice to tell them that, okay? That's it. All right, I'm running out of voice, so I think I'm done rambling. Thank you so much for sticking around. If you've stuck around with this video this long, me just rambling and going on about Phono cartridges and stuff like that, you are an awesome person. Thank you so much for being here. Comments, suggestions, questions, always welcome. Do keep in mind that I'm having to go get the comments. I think that, maybe they fixed the notifications. I'm not sure. I actually got one today. We'll see how this works. But it may be a bit before I get back to you, depending on how busy life gets. And any suggestions for future videos, love to hear those in particular, just where we want to go with that. Whatever you want to do, let me know. Okay, I'm out of here. We'll do this again soon. Thank you for watching.